Welcome to Subzi Life,
Conscious Living with a Twist.
My name's Faizan Subzali.
And I'm Dr. Saira. I'm a psychotherapist, and I help people bring their cultural values and their spiritual beliefs into therapy.
And I am a technology consultant focused on bringing humanity back into technology. And so today we're actually coming to you from a physical couch.
We're on the couch. Faizan's in a blankie.
I was trying to relax, and
he's trying to untangle some mic wires, but I just said, let's use this mic, but he just was insisting. So now he's a wires guy. He has an entire box of wires. And then another box of cords. Those are different things, apparently. Oh, my goodness.
So I guess you're complaining about me today?
No. Kind of. I always am a little bit.
So what are we talking about, Sarah?
So today we wanted to talk about kind of making the most of what you've got. Through this COVID-19 thing and through some of the conversations that have been happening around racism and the Black Lives Matter movement, we've been thinking a lot about what is important to us and what we're willing to put up with and what we're not willing to put up with, and also what we're willing to give so that we can have the life that we want. And so one of the things that we did just before we started this podcast, is we did phase 1 of a 3-phase project, which is basically reconfiguring our living room so that there's less kids crap in it. So phase 1 is done. The play kitchen and the art studio have been relegated to a bedroom. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is that the gaming station has to be put somewhere. And then phase 3 is that we're going to create a little library reading corner for ourselves.
Yeah. I think one of the things we were talking about was actually having a space to reflect. Mm-hmm. And part of that space is, of course, the mental space. Having the capacity to and taking time to reflect daily, but also creating a physical space. And creating a physical space could be, of course, what we're doing is creating this library, mm-hmm. quote unquote library, to sit and reflect rather than just numb out at the end of the night, especially
with TV, right? Because we were talking about how houses are set up. We've been kind of dream shopping, looking at all these houses, and one of the things that I notice in the living rooms is that the focal point is always the television. It's usually above a fireplace, and it's what the whole room kind of centers around. Can you watch TV? And I mean, we don't have a very big house, so we don't have lots of different, we don't have a great room and a bonus room and a living room and a family room. And I don't know what the difference is between those 4, but we're learning slowly. And so we have one space, one kind of relaxing space in the house. And even for us, the TV is now the focus because we moved it into a different spot. And so now it's the focus. And so we were trying to figure out, how our environment tells a story about what we value, right? And if it's all about the TV, well, then what we're saying is that's our value. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my Netflix, all right? And the kids love their Nintendo Switch, and their Faizan loves his Madden and his little comedy shows that he watches. So it's not that TV's a bad thing, but if that's all we're doing when we're not working, if we're either working or watching TV, there's got to be more options than that. And if we don't have a physical space for that, we don't make time for it.
Right. And the physical space, of course, doesn't have to be a room, something that gets built, like what we're trying to do.
But even just a little corner, a chair, one chair, or one little blankie area or something. But like you were saying, Faze, it's also the headspace, right? Yeah. Having the mental space. And I think that's one thing that COVID-19 has given us is space, to slow down, to think, to be, and not have to be engaged all the time. I remember just a few months ago, if I was in the house for more than a day or two consecutively, I would be like, oh my gosh, I've been in the house so long. Can we go do something? And now we're in the house every single day for hours and hours and hours. I mean, we go outside, of course, but, we're not going and doing things and it's okay. It's given us space, mental space.
Right. And so based on that conversation, I mean, I think based on some of the reflections we've been doing and doing the work around the house, the idea of understanding what we have.
Yeah, just making the most of what we have, right? I think it's really easy, and I think it's human nature to look around and say, oh, but why do they have that and we can't have that? Or, I was talking about the dream shopping. We're looking at these, $1 million houses and saying, or 1.6 million or whatever, and 4 million, that one, that one we saw. And it's so, it's so easy to compare and look up at other people's lives, but it's so important to just look at our own life and say, wow, what do we have and how can we make the most of what we have, and not always need to be doing and hustling and trying and pushing so that we can have more house, for example.
Right. And I don't want to start sounding like our parents saying
we totally sound like our parents.
saying that.
We will all turn into our parents. Isn't that what they say?
Yes. I guess that's scary for both of us. So
I love you, Mom.
No, I think it's an interesting concept of understanding our privilege, right? Mm-hmm. What we have compared to others, mm-hmm. right? So there's this. I mean, of course, like our parents used to say, "Hey, there's always somebody worse off than you,"
right?
And it's true, of course, right? But it's actually truly understanding the privilege that we have, and part of it is with what the world is going through in terms of the injustices mm-hmm. actually coming to the forefront into people's faces, and now people have to deal with it however they deal with it. What we've done is kind of looked at that, started reflecting on all the privileges that we've had, mm-hmm. right? Of all the privileges of our parents giving up their lives, starting from that, mm-hmm. right, to move to a country and move to places where they were going to be discriminated against, and they had the disadvantage,
right?
But they did it anyways. I mean, that's just the start of it, and there's just so much that goes along that line. So there's that side, but there's also the concept of, why do they have it and I don't?
Mm-hmm. The jealousy, the envy.
There's a jealousy. There's also, kind of just thinking about, am I willing to do what it takes? One thing, to do what it takes to get that. Mm. Right, like that $4 million house, which we were just looking for the sake of looking. But it's like, for us to do that, it's like, are we willing to do that? And that's just not our nature.
Yeah.
Like, what would be required at this point other than winning a lottery? Even that's not in our value system for us to take on, right? And that's not to judge somebody else to say, okay, they take it on, but it's, hey, good for them. That's their role. They did it. They worked hard for whatever they wanted. We're working hard for this.
Yeah, and I think, again, looking at the context, right, that we come into, our parents, like my mom didn't own a house until I was 18, right? We were renting, we were on welfare. So, the fact that we owned a house right as soon as we got married, and our children have always lived in, I mean, we didn't own a house right away, but we lived in we lived in really nice places, mm-hmm. and except for that one with the mold. Yeah. Oh, it was so cold in that house. Anyway, but I want to switch gears a little bit around making the most of what we have and talk about food. Because what I've noticed, again, because we're not going out as much to get groceries and things, is that we're making the most of what we have. So if all that's left in the pantry or in the fridge is carrots, and there's some canned corn in the pantry, guess what we're eating, right? And we're eating what's there rather than ordering out, which is what we used to do. We would just order food in. But now with trying to save money because our income isn't there as it was, we're eating the canned corn, and we're eating the carrots, and we're eating the the Cheerios that have been sitting there for a month, and we're eating the kids found a box of Triscuits, mm-hmm. right? So it's like we have all these things and we don't even notice how much we have, at least in our house. And so just a lot of gratitude, I guess, and also a lot of like feeling really humbled by, at least for me, from where we've come, like where we've come. When I think about when my parents lived in England, and that little, one, they used to call it a bed sit, which is basically a studio apartment, but like half the size. It's like basically you can have like a bed, and then there's a little sink and a little fridge, and yeah, like there's not a lot of room in there. And family of 4 was living in there. And I remember one story my mom always tells about my brother would, obviously he was a baby, so he was drinking milk, or he was, a toddler or whatever. And she'd put the milk on the windowsill to keep it cold because the fridge wasn't working, or it was too small or something. And it would get stolen by these like milk burglars who would come and steal the milk. And so my brother wouldn't have milk, and so they would give him tea with milk in it. Yeah, back before they knew about caffeinated drinks and the impact on children's brains. But I mean, that aside, and so knowing that my parents went through that and still carry some of the scars from that, and they've never talked about it.
No, absolutely. The same thing with my parents, right? Like the living in slums with sewage water coming into their little hut while they're sleeping on the ground. And like the stories that were shared, they were shared like when I was 28, not when I was younger.
Right. We didn't grow up knowing that our parents had these lives, right?
Yeah, well, lives, and also, right, like to protect us from those things. Like that was their mission. And of course, sitting here on Father's Day and, kind of reflecting back on everything.
This is pre-recorded, by the way.
Yeah, pre-recorded.
It's not going to come out on Father's Day, but we were talking on Father's Day. That's why he's got his blankie, because he gets to do whatever he wants today.
But it's, it's again just reflecting not only what our fathers did, but what our ancestors have
forefathers.
done. Yeah, our ancestors have accomplished in their lives to be able to get us to this point. And for us to now reflect on not what's next, right?
But what's now.
Yeah, what is now. Like what we have now is way more than like I'm sure the place that we live in could I'm pretty sure our families would have fit in 80 people in this
80.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Maybe even that number's low.
Sleeping? I don't know.
They'd be sleeping on the
floor. I guess side by side on every level, and some in the tub.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, and but
80. We should try that one day. Just lie down like that 24 car. We saw this one property that there's like parking spots, 24 parking spots. Like, why do you need 24 parking spots? Oh my gosh. So 80 sleeping spots. That's what you think we could muster?
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. You'd have to get rid of all the furniture and just have floor.
Those are sleeping on the
carpet.
Yeah. But anyways, I think putting our little our thought process aside, was like it's just this, again, having what we have and just reflecting on that
and making the most of it.
Absolutely, and being grateful for what we have, and progress will happen. And I think sometimes progress feels like loss as well, but there is progress happening.
And I think the other piece of it is, there are times when you just need to complain and just need to feel like, why is this happening, and it's so frustrating, and like that happens to all of us, absolutely. And I mean, we do that all the time. But the thing is not to get stuck there, right? And when you've had the vent or you've let it out, to then come back and say, wait a minute, but what do I have? What do I have? And that's what got us getting up and moving our furniture around, right? We said, rather than looking at other people's living rooms, let's do something to ours and, get it to the way that we want it. We saw this, we have this dream that we would have an entire wall full of books, and we'd like have custom built bookshelves. And so we're doing, but you know what? We have a couple bookshelves. Let's just put the bookshelves side by side so it looks like a bookshelf wall, and do it that way, and start there, at least start there. Right.
Yeah. I think, we can leave our listeners with something, because we're getting close to our time, is take time to reflect on what it is that you want, but then line it up with what you already have. Right. And I think for most of us, we'll get to the point where we have more than we actually think. And then from that, like,
the canned corn, man.
there's canned corn, but it's like, it's understanding our starting point, right? Like, because sometimes I need to reach a goal, and we feel like we are somewhere where we're actually at a different point in place, right? Like, so our starting place is something different than what we actually think it is.
So you think you're further behind than you are?
Yeah, absolutely, right? Like, oh, we're so far, and we just ran our numbers, and in the last, however many years, we've been able to actually get to a place where we're like, oh, wow, we actually have this this amount saved for kids' education, for whatever purposes, and we're like, wow, okay, we actually have been making
and that's
progress.
more than our parents had.
Oh yeah,
way more
than, right? Way more than any both of our parents had. And so I think just understanding, like, taking time to reflect on where you are, appreciating where you are,
and who got you there,
and who got us here, is
shout out mom.
Yeah, shout out to all our parents, right? And our ancestors. My mom and dad and your mom worked hard, right? Like, it's just getting us to this place, and then understanding where we are starting from to be able to now say, oh yeah, I'm not that far from this goal.
Right. And to see, like, okay, so one last thought. I asked Faizan this earlier today, like, what's our why? Like, what are we trying to do this for? Because sometimes in the hustle, you can forget why you're trying so hard to make these dollars. Like, yes, it's to pay your mortgage, and yes, it's to buy your clothes and whatever, but what do you really want? And what we figured out that we really want is kind of peace and Mother Nature. Those are the things that we want to do, is we want to be outside, or at least be connected to outside. And not that we're outside people, we're totally not outside people, but like being outside is really powerful. And then having that, like, just quiet, reflective home, that's what we want. And we can create that anywhere. We can create that in a van on a camping trip.
We
right?
have.
Yeah.
We have in the past. So yeah, I think we'll leave you with that thought. So until next time,
smile more
and worry less.